story in the NES era of games was often lacking. That's not to say that you couldn't see this aspect developing with games like Final Fantasy, the Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior for those in the US series, and more forgotten games like Star Tropics and Crystallis. It's just that these were often the minority. Often games just had a premise and either allowed you to explore a world to find out what was next, like The Legend of Zelda or Metroid, or was moved forward by completing stages like Super Mario Bros. Or Ninja Gaiden. When I was a kid, the place that the story of games really started to hit me was the SNES era. The first game that really showed me the power of video game stories was Final Fantasy IV, or Final Fantasy II as I knew it then. It did this from the very start of the game and had me hooked. That's the memory I'm going to look at today. Memory Unlocked is my series that looks at moments from games that have stayed with me. This could be as simple as a time a game gave me a sense of accomplishment or an experience of something new, but most often it will be the story impacting me in some way. Given this, videos in this series will often come with spoilers. While today's memory comes from the very beginning of the game, not all memories will be like that, and with that in mind, let's dive in. Final Fantasy IV opens with 5 airships flying in a V formation. Right from the start, this image drew me in. At this point, the only Final Fantasy game I had played was the first one, where finding just one airship was treated as this legendary discovery. This opening blows that out of the water by showing that airships are not so rare in this world. However, that's not even the main reason why the opening sticks with me. As we zoom into the lead airship, we are introduced to Cecil. He's a Dark Knight and captain of the Air Force of the Kingdom of Baron, the Red Wings. We are introduced to a main character who is troubled. What is the cause of this trouble? Is it a threat to the world that he will be taking on, impending war from a wicked kingdom? No, it's actually his own actions and the orders of his king that troubles him. Cecil and his fleet are heading back to their kingdom after taking a crystal from the land of Mysidia. While we're not told exactly how many are killed, it seems that Cecil and his men killed defenseless Mysidians in the process of taking the crystal. In the flashback that we're shown, 2 black mages and a white mage are murdered, but it was likely more than that. This presents a very interesting start in the game. We are starting the game not as some hero, but as a man who has done something horrible and is haunted by it. He was just following orders, but those orders were atrocious and are not setting right with him or his men. He is troubled deeply by what is going on, but also seems naive to the fact that he is not on the side of good. He has trust in his king, which we later learn is because he was raised by the king almost like a son. However, the king has been acting strangely lately. When back in Baron, as Cecil hands over the crystal to the king, he starts to leave, but then stops and asks the king what is going on. Cecil wants to know what the king's intentions are because these orders aren't setting well with his men, and Cecil is looking for something to tell them, and while it's unspoken, to also assure himself that this is all truly for good. Cecil doesn't get this explanation though. The king's advisor has already noticed Cecil's uncertainty about his mission and lets the king know that he can't be trusted any longer. Cecil's question then prompts the king to strip him of leadership of the Red Wings and sends him on a mission. Even when Cecil's friend Kane, the leader of the Dragoons, tries to stop this, it's to no avail and only gets Kane sent on the same mission. This whole series of events was a crazy start to the story for me. While admittedly the full nuance of this opening was lost to me as a kid, it was still a very different start to a game than I had experienced before. In most games up to that point, you knew what the end goal was from the start. You were supposed to defeat some evil force, save the world, or at least rescue someone. Here, the end goal is murky to start with. You aren't celebrated as a hero from the very beginning. You're in fact stripped of everything you've earned to this point and forced to do some minor delivery. In games like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest up to this point, your first interaction with the king was one of affirmation and blessing you on your quest. Here, it is the absolute opposite. The king questions your loyalty and punishes you with a quest that seems way below your capability. Playing the game now that I'm older, I realize that the game places you in a very interesting position due to this. It demonstrates that something is rotten in the state of Baron. While I was able to pick up on that even when young, what I didn't pick up on as much was the fact that Cecil starts off on the side of evil and just how horrible his actions really were. I think this was so easy to overlook because Cecil never really comes off as too evil. He's troubled by what he has done from the start and acts on that soon after we're introduced to him. However, the killing of innocents is no small matter, and even though he was troubled by it, he still followed his orders. This puts us in the shoes of a flawed hero who has to wrestle with the darkness of his actions. Well, this is perhaps a bit more common of a setup for stories in video games today. I mean, we even have the ability to play full evil if we want to in some games. This was the first time that I remember experiencing a story that didn't start us off as an unqualified hero. This is also also true just of the Final Fantasy series before this. In all the other games so far, you were either the warriors of light chosen to save the crystals, or heroes that helped the rebellion against an evil empire. Final Fantasy IV started you off as being part of that evil empire, and only after realizing how evil that empire truly is, do you place yourself against it. It was a completely different setup for a game, and is really where I fell in love with the Final Fantasy series and video game stories in general. What did you think about the start of Final Fantasy IV? Was this a moment that also left an impression on you, or not really? I'd love to hear other people's experiences of this moment, so please comment below with your thoughts of this moment or of what I've said about it. This is just one of many moments that have left an impact on me from Final Fantasy IV, and it will be one of the 3 games I'll be rotating through for this series. Next month we'll have a moment from another game, so be on the lookout for that. That's all for this video though, so I'll see you next time.